86% of young people are saying that they've given up on their dreams because of the cost of living.
86%.
Yeah.
This is The Payoff with me, Sylvia Jeffries, thanks to Airbnb. Millie, welcome to The Payoff.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm delighted to have you here, and we have a lot to talk about on the mental health front and your own career as well through that process. But I want to start today by asking, how would you embark on this conversation if I were your friend and you were concerned about my mental health?
That's a really great question. And do you mean this, potentially being financial related? Something might have happened,
Anything.
The stressor?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because a lot of mental health conversations at the moment are happening as a result of the cost of living crisis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is something that permeates somebody's sense of self, their identity, and it can be a real chronic stress for people. And so, while people talk about a financial crisis or a recession, I really do think that we're in a bit of a social and a health recession as well. So there might be people, coming to you, your friends, your colleagues, for support at the moment who might not have otherwise accessed you or professional, mental health professionals before, because, this is the first time that they're really feeling, whether they're a young person or established in their career and their life, this might be the first time that they've faced, the very complex and multi-layered challenge of living in 2025. So firstly, I would probably say, well, you're absolutely not alone. And secondly, there are definitely strategies, but mostly there is a conversation to be had around the fact that this is not a failure of yours. It's simply a symptom of living in the world that we're living in. So let's start there.
That's a really interesting point. And this is a big part of why I wanted to get you on today, because when we talk about young people and mental health, a lot of us jump to social media and that plays a role in so many ways.
Yeah.
But how does the current economic climate and the shifting goalposts in personal finance and traditional milestones of getting ahead, how are those factors weighing on young people today in anecdotally in the work that you're doing? What are you seeing?
From so many different angles all at once, which is quite challenging. And social media obviously plays a role in all of that, but it's almost like an amplifier of everything as well. And so the reason that I kind of bring up this social crisis and this health kind of crisis due to the cost of living is because, we're finding it harder and harder to access really basic things, and we're almost subbing them out with social media, which was never supposed to be the case. That isn't necessarily healthy. So at the moment, we're seeing that young people are now the loneliest demographic, despite being so hyper connected, which really tells us that, young people are opting out of, potentially going to the movies or being able to afford public transport or a meal with their mates because it's too expensive and it's inaccessible. And so they're turning to social media, especially if they're rural or remote or they're in marginalised communities. They're turning to social media to find connection, which is incredible. It's amazing that we have those wonderful people who show up online and are real role models and can really provide a sense of, perspective and education for people who otherwise might not be able to access it. But at the same time, we cannot be replacing real world interactions and connection and health interventions with social media. So that's really troubling. We know, I've done some work with my charity, with the Foundation for Social Health earlier this year, and we found through surveying 5,000 Australians that 86% of young people are saying that they've given up on their dreams because of the cost of living.
86%.
Yeah. Isn't that so sad?
That's terrible.
Yeah. And I think it's a real marker of this moment in time because we're having a lot of conversations, and it's particularly the older demographics who had a much different experience of growing up and their adolescence. And, there's so many challenges that are just being a young person developing, let alone developing in this current climate, who are kind of almost a little bit, oh, well, you're privileged and you have access to so many things that we didn't have. And it's like, well, yes, but we're facing so many different challenges because of that, and we're not able to access those traditional success milestones that you were talking about earlier, like affording to buy your own home and feel secure in your rental, or be able to buy enough groceries, or afford the cost of eggs. And that's something that previous generations didn't really face. Like we've seen the graphs. It used to be, around 3 to 4 times your income, and now it's 17 plus times your income to be able to secure a deposit on a house. So it's simply, the stats are showing us that it's simply different, and we're not softer. The conditions are harder. And
this isn't just an Australia issue. I wanted to quote this from the World Economic Forum. The world's 1.2 billion young people, 16% of the global population, stand at a crossroads, they say. They face a future shaped by relentless technological upheavals, economic turbulence, and an evolving social fabric that demands more from them than any generation before. In a world more connected than ever, their struggles are both uniquely personal and profoundly global. We keep talking about how connected they are, but we're talking about technology and social media. Is it your view that maybe social media and that kind of connection is just simply not serving young people?
I think, like I said, it can play a role, but it shouldn't be the whole picture. And I think, I've picked up conversations here and there, around this topic. And from my understanding and my kind of synthesis of all this information is that we're replacing 2 of the key wellbeing factors, movement and connection. And you could probably throw in outdoor time in nature. We're replacing those with phone use and social media. And so when we have free time now or downtime, we're actually not using it to recharge. We're using it to reconnect. And we're not really reconnecting. We're kind of just observing, and we might not even have a conversation with anyone when we go on social media. We might just be scrolling or doom scrolling, or in this kind of numbness to try and feel something. But ultimately we would be better using that time if we were able to move our bodies, or simply
disconnect.
Out and recharging in nature. And that sounds so silly, because it's like, oh my gosh, everyone tells me to just go out and sit in the sun,
touch the grass.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so real, and I think we have to be so mindful of the fact that we cannot be replacing those things with phone and social media use.
So with all the knowledge that you've gathered through your work, how have you set parameters in your own life around social media?
Oh, it's so hard, and I often fantasize about running away to live on a farm and raise baby goats and not have a life online. But in saying that, being online and building a brand online, building a personal brand online.
Can't do it without it.
You can't. No, and it's afforded me so many privileges, and I couldn't have started this charity without, my experience building a personal brand. And, founders now are so pressured into building in public and making it look aesthetic, and it's really, really tricky. We've got this constant surveillance, and there's so many effects of that which are really challenging. But ultimately I have to kind of just use social media for work now, because that already kind of takes up my bandwidth, and occasionally I'll check in with friends and I'll send my closest and dearest memes. Whenever I go online, I'll send it to someone that I'm thinking of. But ultimately I have to kind of put a barrier in there that says, this is your work life, and your home life or your personal life kind of really just does exist off social media, because I just don't have the energy to do both. I put my phone away at around 7 p.m. and charge it in a different room, and I literally close the door and turn the lights off, and my phone's asleep, my laptop's shut. That's the only way. You have to kind of put these preventative thresholds in place, because I feel like when I'm scrolling, there's so many behavioral psychology rules that are built into platforms and notifications and the endless scrolling, like a jackpot machine. We don't stand a chance. Our brains, we don't stand a chance against those scientists.
And if you and I don't stand a chance as adults,
right?
How could a teenager?
Absolutely, exactly, yeah. And digital literacy is something that I'm really interested in teaching, and I do a bit of work with Meta. Actually, I'm teaching some parents this Friday at their HQ for kind of like this parental conference. And you know, one of those key messages that I want to leave with them is that your child's or your young person's online life is so integrated with who they are offline as well. And trying to shame someone into removing their online self is really tricky for a developing person because they're one and the same. And so shame never works. Shame is the most unhelpful emotion to feel. Guilt is necessary as a human being, but shame is just not. You know, shame is what kills people, honestly. So that's kind of the core of that conversation. But for me, you know, I really try not to feel that shame either, you know, around, oh my gosh, I've got like a screen time of 7 hours a day. You know, it's
I
part
bet
of my
mine's
job.
worse, don't worry.
Yeah, and it's part of your job. And
Exactly.
what do your rules at home look like?
There aren't enough rules. I spend way too much time scrolling, and I'm really aware of the fact that I do it in front of my kids, and I need to do it less.
Yeah.
Because they shouldn't have to fight for my attention. It shouldn't be them or a phone.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I'm juggling doing a lot of my work from home and trying to be with them more. So rather than leaving them at preschool for another hour, I go and pick them up early and then kind of try to do a bit of both, play with them, check my phone. But really I need to set stronger parameters, and I'm very aware of that because we talk about this on my show all the time as well. And this is where you and what you do is so important, is putting some language around these things and giving people the words to attach to what they're seeing and feeling and thinking, and maybe some solutions to all of that. How did mental health become such a big part of your world? What was your first experience of it, or perhaps awareness of it?
It was when I was in my early 20s. I was living overseas because I was doing an exchange program. I studied journalism and I was kind of noticing online, it was about 2018 that the therapy is cool movement happened. And I found it really interesting because this was the first time that we've seen like a mainstream conversation about mental illness and what it could look like. And like you said, having language structures is incredibly helpful. It just gives you the power back. It takes you out of your emotions and into a more objective view that kind of says, you know, you are not anxiety, it is something that you're experiencing. And even if it's a lifelong condition, there are, you know, professionals who can help you. There's conversations you can have, you can build support networks, and it is not a personal failure. And so that was something that, you know, I didn't know I had until I understood what it was. So the language was really helpful for me to go, oh, okay, you know, potentially this is a self-diagnosis of an anxiety disorder that I've had my whole life. And, you know, at that point I'd been on antidepressants since I was 16. So about 6 years at that point. And I was prescribed those when I was 15, 16. So I wasn't really old enough to understand much of that conversation. And if I was, I didn't see it anywhere. You know, the doctor just kind of said, here's your prescription, and didn't really go into much. Whereas social media is an amazing space. I think 73%, according to TikTok, of young people in Australia turn to social media for mental health content and mental health support. And those gaps in knowledge that we don't get in school or university as part of our life skills training. And so that was really helpful for me. I was like, well, hang on, is this why I'm on medication? And that just gave me so much power. And that's what I wanted to do for other young people as well. I wanted to go, okay, well, you know, because I've got this kind of, you know, I've got these communication skills, I can tap into different experts in their fields and go, okay, well, I'll take your clinical information and I'll break it down into something that fits social media and is native to that space where young people can actually have a similar experience to me and go, oh, okay, you know, I'm going to take that and kind of start exploring it. And, you know, we've seen the rise in diagnoses in ADHD and OCD and all of these different experiences of mental illness. And even if you don't go down the path of a diagnosis, it can still be really helpful to understand, you know what, actually my brain may be a little bit different. or this isn't who I am for life, this is just a season. All of these realizations are so liberating, and they can absolutely change your life and change the way that you show up in the world.
I'd like to talk about burnout, which is something that really affects younger generations more than probably people realise. And in fact, there was some research out just recently in the last couple of weeks that speaks to that. I'll point to some research in particular from News Corp and Medibank, which found that 34% of Australians currently experiencing burnout. Of that 34% of Australians who experience it, 45% are Gen Z, 41% millennials, citing a lack of downtime and saying they feel overburdened daily due to career demands, family responsibilities and social expectations. Why is Gen Z or Gen Z so burnt out?
That's a very big question, and I think we've touched on a fair bit of it up until now, but ultimately it's chronic stress. All of those factors that we've touched on a little bit here, social health, financial health, moving into cost of living, moving into someone's sense of, identity, and grief as well at having to give up on dreams and understanding that, I don't have as many options as my parents did. There's a whole lot of emotions mixed in one, but ultimately burnout is chronic stress or a symptom of chronic stress. And burnout kind of happens at the end of that line when you've got this adrenal fatigue and you've been kind of surviving so long, firing, in fight or flight, and your body's just, okay, now I'm numb. Now I'm burnt out.
What
the flame
exactly
is
out. Burnout? Well, how would you differentiate burnout from someone who just needs a holiday?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think burnout is typically something that someone experiences for more than, say 2 days or that a weekend could fix. Some people go, oh, I just really need this long weekend. I'm so grateful. We're going over to our parents' place and we're having this lovely holiday. I'm getting away from work. I'm shutting my emails. That won't fix burnout. That will potentially fix someone's need to just step away for a minute and reset and spend time with their family and recharge with all of those things that help them feel whole again. But burnout is something that, potentially might need medical intervention. In its worst case, it can manifest in all sorts of different ways. People can go through like their hair falling out or them physically being unable to get out of bed, and it manifests in all of these unique ways that can appear to be quite severe. And so it's not just this buzzword, it's this very real health implication. And so it's almost like, well, we've got these varying stages of burnout, but how can we kind of stop ourselves from getting there? How can we understand what it might look like? And you hear these stories, especially in women, I feel, because they're managing, potentially a household.
Mental load.
Yeah, the mental load is so heavy that the burnout comes on a lot faster and stronger, who kind of have these moments of like really severe mental and physical illness that was their kind of rock bottom. That was their burnout. And it can be really serious. And that's when you kind of have to make those lifestyle changes and look at, okay, well, I don't want to end up there again, because it will take you really long to get back to the healthy version of you after that. And when I was researching for this, I was looking at what chronic stress can do to you daily. So this is talking about even before we get to the burnout stage. So some research was done around 10 years ago now. So by now it's probably even a lot worse, between Princeton and Harvard and Columbia. And they found that for people experiencing chronic stress, particularly financial scarcity as a type of chronic stress, that cognitive testing of these people actually showed a drop of negative 13 IQ points.
Wow.
During that particular day, when those participants were kind of preoccupied by that chronic stress from those worries of, am I going to be able to put food on the table tonight? How am I going to manage picking up my child and going to work? And I've got to get to this health appointment, but it's going to cost so much. All of those sorts of things, that chronic kind of on mode. And that's the equivalent of losing a whole night's sleep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is that why on my really bad days I go to the shops, pay for something and walk out without it?
Yeah. Yep, your IQ score's just gone way down.
Just got really dumb.
Yeah, and it's not a personal failure. It's the chronic stress.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very real, and it shows up in very physical ways. Yeah.
So as the founder of a charity of ALLKND, how do you stave off burnout? How do you manage that in your own life?
I don't think I've experienced the really bad burnout, and touch wood, hopefully I've got enough kind of stories and lived experience stories from people who have shared with me that I'll notice the signs and kind of go, okay, cool, we're heading into danger zone now. Let's, do something to prevent going any further. For me, it's really just been showing up kind of in this apathy, this sense of apathy. And that starts to become very worrying for me as someone who is in social impact and is truly living out their passion, which not a lot of people get to say that they do every day. When I start to feel like none of it matters, that's when I'm like, okay, that's like a big red flag for me. And even particularly outside of work, I'm as a young person who is really starting to understand the beauty in the small things in life, like a coffee in the sunshine with your family or your dog or whoever. When that doesn't interest me, that's like, oh, wow, okay, that's a really bad sign. Let's pull back. And it's difficult though, because, obviously the antidote to that is rest. And mental rest. So not just like sitting on the couch watching, your favorite TV show and scrolling at the same time. Like that's not going to help you burn out. You need to have like actual rest. And for me, that would probably be nature, some sort of movement and connection with others. Connection with others is probably something that I would really like to do more of, and is something that I'm really looking into with my charity at the moment as a way to address this kind of chronic stress that we're feeling.
Talk to me about loneliness among young people and how prevalent it is right now.
It is extremely prevalent. 1 in 2 of us are reporting feeling lonely most or all of the time.
1 in 2?
Yeah.
Is that rising?
We're now officially the loneliest demographic. Yeah. Which is Gen Z, yeah, and millennials, yeah. Which is so interesting because we've grown up online and we have this built-in kind of connection piece with all of the platforms and things that we access online. Yeah, but we're swapping that for those real life connections.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So this is something you're tackling with the next phase of your business.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Cause Club.
Yeah. So we were looking at, and this is also a little bit selfish of me because I definitely understand the experience of loneliness. I kind of missed out on some formative years when I was overseas for a few years, and then I moved to Sydney and I never really developed a friendship group. I've got, a few close friends, and I know that it's obviously not about quantity, it's quality, and I'm very grateful for the people I do have in my life. I'm also a founder of, a startup as well, so I don't have like built-in colleagues or anything. I have a couple amazing colleagues now, but, this was a very solo journey for a very long time. I don't really have any hobbies because I'm always, there's always something to do.
Very busy.
Yeah, there's always something to do work-wise and building this thing. And I don't have anyone telling me to stop working or when enough is enough. So anyway, all of that combined, I don't really have anywhere to go on the weekend. I also don't drink. So I find bars and pubs and things like that kind of difficult sometimes. And I'm also very socially anxious. It's like this big combination of making up this lonely individual. And we know that we've kind of lost this idea of third spaces. Have you come across that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So work, home and the
or
other.
School.
Yeah.
It could be school instead of work. But then the third space used to be churches and civic centres and clubs and youth groups.
Scouts and Girl Guides.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I went to some sort of church group even though I wasn't religious. It was just what we did when we were like, early teens. But we don't really have that anymore. we've seen the rise in run clubs and pottery
That's
classes.
my third space, run club.
Is it? Amazing.
Yes, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is great.
It's an amazing community.
Yeah, a lot of people. It's also the new dating club, apparently.
Mine's not a dating club. Yeah. Mine's for old people like me. Mostly mums who just want a break.
I love it. It's amazing. It's so good. I don't identify with any of those. I can't run with anyone because I'm always out of breath and it's just my me time. So anyway, when I was at my absolute lowest mental health wise during COVID, I was trawling through Seek Volunteer to try and tap into some sort of in-person activity. And my happiness is most alive when I'm being helpful. I feel a sense of purpose and I feel like, life is worth living and this is what we were supposed to do. I feel like I, deserve a spot here. I need to be here. And it's just when I'm happiest. I love helping people. And so during that experience, I didn't find anything. Most of the opportunities were remote. I understand that we're in COVID. I was up in Brisbane, so there are a few things that I could have gone to. But it was just really hard. And I went to a couple of things, but it was still quite a lonely experience because you're kind of just there to do the thing. And then you go home a couple of hours later and you feel a little bit good because you've given your time or your skills. But when coming up with this new concept of, okay, cool, we don't have any third spaces anymore. How can we create a recurring social infrastructure or connection infrastructure that isn't related to a specific kind of skill or identity, such as running or art classes? And there's already so many beautiful ones popping up in our spaces too. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's give volunteering a go to create cause-based connection because it's something that you can show up to with no skills. You just need to come with a pair of jeans if that's what it requires to donate, or a few cans of soup, or just your hands, and you can show up once a month, and we'll have this seasonal rotation of causes. So depending on what month it is, but perhaps in, May we'll do something around blankets for people sleeping rough during the winter. Maybe in March it'll be around the animal shelters because people dump their dogs after Christmas. All of these kind of needs that happen, these surges that take place from very worthy causes. And so the big goal is to build Australia's biggest database of young people who want to do something with their anxiety. Yeah, they want to turn it into action in some way.
It's so interesting and meaningful. I have been working with the charity Young Care for over a decade, and it is the most rewarding thing I do. And I actually find it hard to articulate what it means to me to be involved with them and to see what they have achieved. They've been around for 20 years this year. They're celebrating a big milestone. What do we know about the benefits of volunteering and engaging in charity work?
Yeah. We know that people who do volunteer, particularly around other people, have better mental health outcomes. Because especially at the moment when we're lacking this sense of purpose, we're potentially getting a big hit to our identity and self-esteem. Self-esteem is something that very much plays into somebody's level of mental well-being. And being able to find this sense of belonging too, which is what, these run clubs offer for people. So all of that combined, we know that it can make a difference to someone individually. And then on the other side of that as well, we know that just 10% of people coming together to do something good can create mass change. So it feels achievable, these tangible outcomes that come from people just getting together, connecting around a common thread, a common goal, a shared intention, and this sense of just wanting to give back, even though a lot of young people don't have much to give at the moment. We're actually the most generous demographic in terms of donations. Yeah, even though we don't have the resources, we just want to make the world a better place.
Good people.
Yeah, we're good people. And perhaps we feel a lot of the anxiety that's happening in the world, because we've inherited a world that feels so chaotic and disorganized, and we want to do something to make sure it's livable for us. Otherwise, none of this is worth it.
It's such a good point. I'm going to, when we release this episode, for everyone who's listening, I'll make sure we put up all the relevant links so that people can get involved.
It's free.
And be a part of this.
Yeah. And so we'll have this like big database. You just drop your name and email, and then you'll get notified of, you know, our official events. And then ideally we'll tap into this hidden network of stuff that's already happening. So these charities doing already really great opportunities that young people can go to either alone or together, or bring a friend, someone else from Cause Club, to create this like real grassroots movement of young people who just want to turn their anxiety about the world into action.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
Everything you're doing is clearly reverberating and echoing far and wide. You were among a group of young business and media leaders who were invited down to Canberra for the budget lockup.
Yeah.
You were invited to meet the Prime Minister that day, is that right?
Yeah.
How much time did you get with him? What did that look like?
2 minutes. It was cool because I got to see the inside of his little suite inside Parliament House. It's very fancy. They've got like a big kind of meeting room where he hosts guests, and we just sat there until he came through and said, okay, cool. Hi. What's your question for me? And I asked him about, you know, what actually gives him a sense of hope for young people, given that half of us are chronically anxious about our future. You know, he was about to just release the budget. I was like, you know better than anyone. And he kind of tapped into, you know, a few different responses. But yeah, I wanted him to kind of act less as a politician and more as a human. But I understand that he was in very much of a Prime Minister headspace that day. But it was a really cool opportunity.
What did it mean to you as the founder of a charity to be invited? It was only 2 minutes, and you know there was some criticism that it may have been tokenistic. Yeah. But what did it mean to you to have been invited for that moment?
I just felt really lucky to represent this demographic of young people who are struggling so much with the circumstances they've inherited, and you know, living in or against, I guess, these policies that were made for generations that have now kind of moved on, and a system that doesn't really work for us. I just felt really honoured and very cognizant of the fact that I was trying to represent so many different people's stories. Yeah.
If you'd had more than 2 minutes with him, what would be on your wish list for mental health services?
I would say, can you please fund a social health network? Can you make sure that, you know, we're funding preventative mental health? If a doctor, a GP is prescribing antidepressants, can they also prescribe social connection? And can you actually not just back reactive services like these Medicare clinics? That was kind of the key headline out of that budget, and about the consequential $1 billion promise for mental health from the Labor Party. Can we not just be looking at reactive services? Can we actually look at the end of the other end of the spectrum, which is prevention? So can you please get the Minister for Education talking to the Minister for Health? Why are they not catching up every week to talk about how we can make sure that mental health literacy is in our curriculum, and make sure that things like what we teach at ALLKND, which is how to support someone through a panic attack or self-harm, is actually in the curriculum, because young people are having these conversations already. I was 15 when I experienced my friend going through something really traumatic, and I was their emotional support person at 2 a.m. every night. And that was a really difficult experience for someone with no knowledge or skills to be able to support them. No language. I didn't have any language to understand what was going on. So, yeah, it's a big ask. But I think if we're so focused on reaction, can we also move some of the spotlight to prevention?
In terms of reaction, though, what about accessibility to therapy, to counsellors, to psychologists, psychiatrists? It still seems out of reach. It's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And there are deductions available, obviously, for a certain number. But even then, there are barriers in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that being said, the reactive end also needs funding. We still need a lot of funding, and we need more incentives for, you know, mental health professionals to actually go into that industry as well. We need more paid placement. We need more streamlined ways to get people into industry so that we have more psychologists available. It's just clearly not working at the moment.
What would a funded social network look like?
Earlier this year when I was working with the Foundation for Social Health, and they're the experts in this, Mel Wild is the founder and CEO, and she's done a lot of work in the policy space, and she's seen and heard those very real stories of people experiencing homelessness and DV and how that impacts someone's level of mental stability, let alone mental wellness, you know. It's hierarchy of needs. It's like food, water, shelter, connection. And so when looking at this social health network, it can be things like Cause Club, right? So like this space where people can go and just be, not have to, perform or be someone that they're not. It's just somewhere to go and just exist. A library is a good option for that. Like, how can we fund more spaces like that? And then looking also at the preventative side of mental health as well. Foundation for Social Health spoke to people like hairdressers, people who work in early education centres who can potentially be spotting signs of domestic violence, hairdressers who might be the first person somebody tells about their plan to end their life. We've got people in remote areas who are starting mental health pubs for men who are disconnected in later life. Just all of these everyday heroes that don't have any funding. You know, no one's actually paying for them to learn mental health first aid or domestic violence screening questions or anything like that. The guy out in the remote area, he refinanced his mortgage to be able to afford this pub. So like, how can we be tapping into this hidden network, you know, these everyday heroes who are doing real preventative kind of mental wellness protectors? How can we make sure that they're
That's so
funded?
interesting.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Doing crucial work.
Yeah, they really are. They're really saving lives.
You mentioned earlier you studied journalism, so you could have been a journalist, but you have gone down the path of the not-for-profit space. Are you glad you chose a career in this area?
I actually am. Yeah. I was one of those people who graduated and was like, I don't know what I want to do. And for an anxious person, that's the worst thing ever because I like clarity. Clarity is kindness to me. I like to know what's happening and what I should do and how I should spend my HECS debt. And my best mate, Lily Greer, have you heard?
I do, Lily,
Lily's at 9. Yeah, shout out Lily Greer. So we're still best mates and we went to journalism school together. She was great at it. I was not. I was too flowery in my language and wanted to do all the creative stuff, and she wanted to do political reporting, and I was like, it's just not me. So I actually went down more of the comms path, and I was actually really glad that I did that degree because it taught me the art of telling a story. And I think with social impact, that's something that I've really tried to nail.
It's crucial to your work.
It is really crucial. And that's something that potentially after ALLKND I'd love to do to help people in social impact actually craft and tell their story, because that's how you get into rooms, it's how you get grants, it's how you get people on side, it's how you get board directors and volunteers. It is so crucial when you have no money that you have a story. And it's not just your story as a founder story, it's the people who you're representing. It's telling their story.
So for a young person who might be weighing up their career path and obviously worried about the economics of today and how they generate an income that can sustain them for the rest of their lives. They might be tossing up between working for a big bank or working for a charity. Yeah. What would you say are the benefits of following the charity path?
The financial benefits are not really a thing.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be kind of already in a career as a kind of lifestyle journalist, kind of freelancer, which was already a little bit precarious. So I wasn't really sacrificing too much in terms of a steady income. But I do know people who have kind of gone into different spaces in social impact that do come with a paycheck, a steady paycheck, such as media at a children's hospital or working, potentially in one of these early learning centres where they're teaching people how to screen for domestic violence. Like there's ways you can work in social impact that aren't necessarily just going out and starting a charity. You know, that might come later in life, or you might consult for a particular not-for-profit. there's so many ways that you can tap into that space. And I think we're seeing more and more of that, particularly with social media. And there are ways to find those people already doing it and ask if you can, come in and hang out for a bit or ask them what their day looks like. And I think just like waking up and deciding, okay, cool, I'm going to afford to be able to live in 2025 as a young person and I'm just going to start a charity from scratch is a very unrealistic
It's pretty rogue.
dream. Yeah, it's a bit rogue. Yeah. But I was already living in the precarious zone, so my parents weren't too worried.
Yeah. When you talk about not knowing what you want to do and where you want to go with things, that's a feeling that so many people experience, especially straight after school. There are kids sitting there, their HSC exams right now, probably heading into a HEX debt beyond that.
Yeah.
But what would you say to someone about the best way to find their why, their purpose?
Probably asking a lot of questions. I remember when I was thinking about, journalism school, I called up a couple of people already kind of established in their industry and I was like, what does your day look like? And back then they didn't really post too much about it on social media. Now you can get someone's day in the life on TikTok, which is great. But I think still calling them and being like, what are the ugly sides of your job and do I want to do this? Because the more no's you can tick off, such as definitely don't want to be a fighter or I don't think I'll ever enjoy doing XYZ, the more no's that you can tick off, the closer you get to your yes.
Narrow it down.
Yeah, you narrow it down. And I think just following, and obviously this is a privileged thing to say, but following what is really interesting to you, like what makes you want to ask more questions. And then bonus, if you can kind of tap into something that really makes you feel a sense of passion and a sense of justice or like you're actually contributing to something meaningful. I think Gen Z is really driving that next wave of work. They want work to feel meaningful and I don't think that's too far-fetched to ask for. I think there's a bunch of even like, commerce focused companies, really successful companies who are now demanded by the next generation to make sure that they've got a really big corporate social responsibility arm happening because young people are not wanting to work for companies that aren't doing social good too.
It's really interesting, that big shift, isn't it? Gosh, I have so many more questions to ask and I'm running out of time. I'm getting really anxious just thinking about it. But I want to ask, before we wrap up, about external perceptions and social media. Yeah. And everything that comes with that. I mean, I live with that. I'll have a pretty public job.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
When you were invited down to Parliament, there was a lot of commentary and a lot of headlines around Lululemon ambassador invited to Parliament House, or young female influencers who are actually really impressive new media representatives and journalists. How did that sit with you? Did it affect you at all, that commentary?
Yeah, it did initially. And then I was like, actually, this is a really cool story to tell. This is a really cool part of my story. And then a month later with the Lululemon ambassador thing, I actually announced that through a separate team over in Vancouver, the HQ, the charity was actually selected as 1 in 5 Australian charities to receive one of their community wellbeing grants. And so I made this post. I was like, I mean, yeah, I'm a Lululemon ambassador, but look at where it's got me, even though the two weren't necessarily interconnected. But that was a cool, really like flip the script,
flip the narrative
kind of moment. Yeah. And I think you can do a lot with the noise. I think you can turn it into a really cool or a really cool story, and it can also strengthen your voice too.
So how does that apply, do you think, to the average person on social media who might be dealing with something negative coming their way and they're internalizing that?
I always like to do the 777 model where you kind of look at, okay, cool, like, is this going to impact me in the next 7 minutes? Yeah, it's going to make me feel pretty shit for the next 7 minutes. What about 7 days? Yeah, maybe. What about 7 months? Nah, I'm not going to remember this. And then I always like to think about the people I actually care about and their opinions of me. If I've done something that I know that my mum will be like, I'm really disappointed in you.
This is my touchstone too.
Yeah.
I think of my family and what would be their read on this.
Yeah. And if their read and my close friends is like, yeah, you've messed up here, I'll be devastated.
Yeah.
But if it's just some random person on the internet,
Yeah.
then maybe I'll screenshot it, send it to my
But
mum.
here's the other thing too. Like, yes, maybe you messed up in that moment.
Yeah.
But everyone's going to mess up.
Yeah.
And everyone gets a shot at repairing as well.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the interesting thing about social media. You get held to account and you get held to account really quickly in real time. So I'm always really scared of that. It's a very real fear. It's part of that anxiety of living and working online.
Publicly.
Yeah. But I don't think it's a bad thing to have you, be held to your mistakes and understand how you can grow from them.
You're not a narcissist if you're afraid of consequences. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go.
there's something good. There's a silver lining. Okay, let's finish off. What is your hope? Where do you see hope for young people?
I see hope in their want for a better future. Even though the statistics are really, really grim, we do know that this generation is one that is so, so curious and interested and feels this sense of responsibility to right the world. We've got this deep sense of empathy and a deep sense of humour, despite the fact that we're living in a world that is really difficult for us. So there is clearly hope. If we're able to laugh about things, we're able to see some sort of light. And I think we can feel like we count on that light at the end of the tunnel, because that is actually us growing into leadership positions, growing into the next parliament, and parents.
Would you run for politics one day?
No. Go talk to Hannah Ferguson. I could not do it, but I am very in awe of the women who do. I would like to be politics adjacent, like creative, maybe consulting or just like telling the stories, but not actually doing the job. It's very, very hard.
I'm sure
feel.
You could write a few policies that could be considered in Canberra.
Yeah, I'd help for sure. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on all the work you're doing. Please keep doing
Sylvia.
it. It's so nice to chat.
Likewise. Thanks for sharing my
Millie.
story.
Pleasure.